Now back to the show. This is The Law Show on CL 650.
Because I used to love her, but it's all over now.
Dwayne, I think you picked the perfect song.
That's a winner.
I used to love her, but I don't love her now. The Law Show on CL 650. Yeah, we're talking about breakups, relationships ending, marriage ending. It's family law. And David Halkett is in studio. He's a partner at McQuarrie Hunter, along with Sarah Morse, associate at McQuarrie Hunter in Surrey. The experts here when we talk about family law. Now, we talked about going to court and how that's part of your job is getting a judge. The ultimate is to finalize your divorce. Yep. But you might have to go for other reasons. And part of it is maybe being in an abusive relationship. So we'll get into what you have to do to, say, get a protection order. Mm-hmm. But I want to start wide and then narrow it down. So when you have people come in to you, and we talked about that initial cry session with the Kleenex about spilling their life, how often do people come forward readily with, I'm in an abusive relationship, or do you have to tease it out of them, or maybe they don't realize they're in an abusive relationship? So, David, I'll get you to start.
Well, it's the definition of abuse under our Family Law Act is quite broad. So the classic case that we saw, was just the physical violence.
Sure.
But that's a pretty minor part of the abuse and the family violence now. Most don't readily come out and tell you. Mm-hmm. Under our rules, and our family law, as lawyers, we are required to canvass and to, in effect, evaluate whether or not there's been family violence in the. So that's
one of the things you have to ask.
Yeah,
it's like when you take your child to hospital and they've broken their arm. Mm-hmm. Well, how did they break their arm?
Exactly.
I had that. I said I was wrestling with him in the basement.
Yeah.
But I wasn't abusing him.
Yeah.
Just having fun.
Then all of a sudden the guys in the leather coats come out with the flashlight.
Come with us. But so that's good. And that was obviously implemented because of this situation. People don't want to disclose it.
Exactly. So we're required to ask and to canvass and then use that to determine whether or not this is a person who will need some kind of an order in court, or whether or not they'll be able to keep the matter out of court and resolve it despite the fact that there was violence.
Okay, well, when you say abuse is broad, can you give us an example of something that we would, outside of physical violence?
Financial. Yeah. Financial is a huge one, especially in immigrant cases. So, we have a lot of families where the spouse has sponsored the other spouse, for example, to come over from India or Iran or Philippines, that sort of thing. And there can sometimes be that financial abuse where if you don't listen to what I say, you're not going to get your money this month, or I'm not going to give you a key to lock the house so you can't leave. You're not going to have a car to drive. I'm not going to send money to your family. Mm-hmm. So that's financial abuse. Mm-hmm. So the Act now sort of clarifies that there are these different levels of abuse other than what we typically used to characterize as abuse, which is just the physical violence. There's financial, there's
control issues.
Exactly. You can't call your friends. I check your phone every time you come in. I accuse you of having an affair, that kind of stuff.
So that's somebody who's the green monster. They're jealous about everything, right?
Exactly.
So they just take it out that way. So and that causes a lot of stress. And maybe the person doesn't realize that until you point it out, mm-hmm. or you ask the pertinent questions.
Well, and sometimes people have gone to counseling before they come to us. And if they've gone to a shelter or some kind. But we ask that, and I'll say was there violence? No, he never hit me. But I'd say family violence includes various things, and then they start being a lot more open. It's also a lot of times when they come in, people don't want to talk about certain things like that. Mm-hmm. So it makes it difficult for Sarah and I and other lawyers to get the information we need because people are somewhat reticent to talk about it.
And does it typically happen on the third or fourth meeting that they finally feel comfortable enough with you to let you know that's happened?
You often will get more details the longer you've been with them. They may say there was some violence, but that's not why I'm leaving and that kind of stuff. And then you find out more down the road. What I find is a lot of people will put up with a lot of what they would consider abuse, family violence on a wide range until they're afraid it's going to affect the children or that it's going to be turned on the children.
Yeah, that's the linchpin. I've had that on
So I've got a thick skin. I can take it, but when it comes to my kids,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's often sort of where they've made that decision. It's affecting the kids. I'm done.
Yeah, or there's a risk, a good substantial risk, the violence is going to turn towards the children.
Exactly.
Children are older or whatever. What I find is a lot of people, the economically less or economically dependent spouse is probably a better way to put it. Usually, the wife stays and puts up with it because they need to financially, and it can be because, as Sarah said, they were sponsored to come here, their language skills. Some of them have just been married for a long time and they haven't worked for a long time, and they need the financial security, even though it comes with a big price.
So that's the double whammy of the financial abuse with maybe some physical or mental or
Control issues.
issues, and it's just basically I'm in charge of the house.
Exactly.
And you have no say.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe abuse of a different kind is alcoholism and drug abuse for one person that's affecting the rest of the family. So you live with somebody who's an alcoholic and they're not physically or mentally abusing you, but their presence in the house is causing turmoil. And as you mentioned, it's starting to affect the children.
Yeah.
So do you see that?
Oh, absolutely. Or mental health issues is one that happens.
Depression and, bipolar. Like, when I first started, you've asked me on previous shows, Zach, how it's different. No one ever mentioned that the spouse was mentally ill or that they had bipolar or anything. That comes up a lot in matters now. And that can be a major issue between the parties.
Especially when it comes to safety concerns, with respect to the kid, the children, with respect to the capacity or ability to parent. And one parent says, well, they've got mental health issues. They're actually seeing somebody now to get help with anger issues and other sort of depression and mental health issues, and they're not capable of looking after the children. And and if they aren't able to recognize it, you're in for some difficult circumstances.
Which would be another reason why somebody would be reluctant to start the process of divorce, because if somebody is unstable, what is that going to trigger?
Exactly.
And often when people do separate, there's an increase in family violence. So the irony of the separating because there was a violent relationship is it may actually cause an uptick in the violence in the relationship or an uptick in the mental health issues. And, we've all as lawyers dealt with a party on the other side who was mentally ill, and it can be just situational as a result of the breakdown, or it can be a long-standing one. And it's difficult to deal with, especially if they're unrepresented, because they will pound you with paper. They will make ridiculous allegations, sometimes about the lawyer himself or herself. And trying to remain calm and dealing with it is very difficult. Those are probably the most trying cases that Sarah and I would have.
Yeah, where the Ministry of Children and Families are contacted, and there's competing allegations of unfit parenting, and it can get really nasty when you're dealing with abuse and mental health issues.
Is there? You can't use blanket sort of generalities here, but do you find that different cultures are more reluctant to come forward with these things because of sort of a patriarchal system in their culture?
Well, obviously, where our office is located, that we have a large Indo-Canadian community, and it's changing now with the younger generation. They don't put up with some of the things their mothers used to put up with, or their fathers would put up with. But if I'm acting for an Indo-Canadian woman who is, say, over 50, tend to be less likely to admit that there was violence. And often it's not the spouse. It can be sometimes the in-laws as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. You have grandparents, cousins, and aunts and uncles.
And they often own the house that they live in.
And it's not just to pick on one group. That's just who we our experiences.
You're close to that. Yeah.
Exactly. In other cultures, it may be more financial. I'm not giving you money. It's just people just tend to not want to talk about what happens in their own home. That's why when I've had cases where if I'd seen them on the street, I would have thought they were the perfect family, and yet then when you get the story that happened, it's like you never know what's going on in someone's house.
Yeah, you don't.
And
people put forward a great sort of image of what they want to project to the world.
Yeah, because I don't think anyone ever wants to admit that they've been abused for years and they put up with it just because they had to. And You know, and sometimes people don't realize that it was abusive until they're out, and then they realize
just how bad it was.
Yeah, the whole weight, the piano's off their back.
Well, that's what I was getting at earlier. Sometimes you might not realize that you're in a situation where you have somebody that's hyper controlling of your life until you point it out. Well, are you allowed to go with your friends and have lunch? No. Are you allowed to drive on your own? No. Are you, you know, all
Do you
those
have access to the bank accounts? Do you know what your, what your investments or your spouse's investments are? And it's not until you uncover all that someone can realize, I know nothing. I know nothing about anything in our personal life. Yeah. Because I've been kept under their thumb.
Mm-hmm. All right. So with that cheery topic, we're going to change things up a little bit, and we're going to get into, you know, what you do as a lawyer to help protect your client if that is something that needs to happen. When we come back on The Law Show on CL 650.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.